When we take time to think about cultural diversity and sensitivity, the things that you need to think about is what is culture, and then being able to recognize those cultural differences as far as physical assessment goes, including values and beliefs of your patients. When you think about the diversity that's occurring in the United States, the population is actually increasing by more than 2.5 million people each year, and approximately half of these people are immigrants. So when you think about transcultural nursing, that nursing focuses on care, health, illness patterns of people with similarities and differences in cultural belief, values, and practices. So with that transcultural nursing, the focus is really to become culturally competent and accepting of the different cultures and cultural diversity. So when you think about culture, what is culture? Culture is not restricted to race, ethnicity, but it refers more toward an integration of patterns of behavior that are acquired over time. So it also includes beliefs, values, customs, habits, languages, those types of things. So culture is learned within a family unit. It can be passed on from generation to generation to other social organizations. So culture provides worldview, which helps which helps guide with decision making as well as life choices. When you think about cultural diversity, that's going to be the differences among people, and they can be visible or not visible. So it could be as such as race with visible physical characteristics, or it could be ethnicity, which shows common group social customs, values, and beliefs. So this slide talks about the objectives that we're going to be covering. So you can see that there's quite a few objectives. It's going to go from objective 162 all the way through objective 201. So it's really finishing up what is left of basic concept in nursing. When you think about cultural competence requires self-awareness of your own identity, your own knowledge, your skills, and understanding about diverse groups. So you first have to examine your own feelings and understand your own feelings, and then as well as your own heritage. So with you becoming nurses, and we as nurses, we need to prevent biases or the tendency to act, think, or feel in a certain way towards other people. So we need to set those feelings aside. And in the healthcare, cultural competence refers to the ability of healthcare providers and organizations to understand and respond effectively to different cultures. And really, the linguistic needs of the patients are the number one thing, the number one barrier in healthcare and in healthcare settings right now. So we need to take aware of those things. And as you can see on this slide, this is really driven by Joint Commission and National Patient Safety Guide standards. So we do have to be respectful of all the different cultures that we will come in contact with. With cultural sensitivity, you need to be aware of and respect and then appreciate the cultural differences that you will come in contact with. When you think about cultural disparities, those are differences in incidence of healthcare problems among minority and racial or ethnic groups when compared to the white majority. So there are definitely going to be different cultural disparities that you see. You want to avoid any biased or offensive languages, as well as avoid stereotyping. So when you think about factors that contribute to these different biases, it can be socioeconomic statuses, individual discrimination. Do these patients have access to care? Are there language barriers? So there's a variety of contributing factors, social roles, those types of things. So it's really important for us as healthcare providers to avoid stereotyping. And when you're thinking about the self-esteem of the individuals of different cultures, it's really important to recognize that people's self-esteem is influenced by his or her culture. So when I say that, it can mean that you have met personal goals, or that your community or your tribe have met personal goals. And so therefore it could be the entire family, or it could be the community that will help build self-esteem and esteem of the group. If you take a look at Purnell's Domains of Culture, it's table 4.2. in your Giddings book, the table shows 12 essential areas that you need to remember to assess when you're assessing for cultural diversity and when you want to understand or have an understanding of any culture. So just talking briefly about each of these, with cultural overview, that's going to be a person's heritage, their residence, education, occupation, those types of things. So it's really just looking at a broad picture of what that patient has or is expressing. Cultural or communication, language is the largest barrier for non-English speaking patients. So we need to ensure that we have interpreters available in healthcare facilities, and it is required by law due to the JCAHO standards and National Patient Safety Standards. So determine what forms of patient communication are acceptable and ensuring that we have that readily available for our patients. With homelessness, most people that are homeless avoid seeking health care. They either mistrust or they have a fear of discrimination. So when you're taking care of the homeless people, really remember they can be any age, ethnicity, education level, occupation. Really, there's many different factors. So we are seeing an increase in the homeless due to the recession and high unemployment rates. So when you are assessing the homeless folks, remember there is a very diverse background. We also need to think about absolute and relative homelessness. So with absolute homelessness, they have no physical home, and maybe with relative homelessness, they have a shelter or somewhere they stay, but most likely it is unsafe or unsanitary. The homeless are more prone to cardiovascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, high cholesterol, huge infection rates, and so we need to really work hard with these homeless and try to compensate for the limited time that we will have with them. Family and workplace issues can be due to gender roles and the influences that those play in the plan of care. For example, if you look at Arab Muslim, women can't be exposed and only females can provide care to the female population. So assess who makes decisions in the family and don't assume that your patients can or will or even want to make those decisions. When you're thinking about the lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender population, we are seeing an increase in this population, but many fear prejudice and so are very hesitant to seek medical care. So when you are dealing with them, remember to set aside your biases and ask questions about their sexual identity, find out what coping mechanisms they have. With biologic ecology, the biologic variations include drug metabolism differences and body shape, body size, body type. So different things to think about with that. And then nutrition. Nutrition is always part of a comprehensive health assessment. So remember to respect patients' food preferences and beliefs, and then assess for any rituals or customs. Lastly, with spirituality, spirituality isn't just the thought of church or being in the house of God. Spirituality involves behaviors that give purpose to life. It provides individuals with strength, and it has shown to enhance patient satisfaction if their spiritual needs are met. With ethnopharmacology, that is the study of the effects of ethnicity and how drugs work on the body. So you need to consider lifestyle and values. Drug and alcohol abuse can affect how drugs work and are metabolized. Those are lots of different things that play a part into ethnopharmacology. But we definitely do see cultural variances and differences across the board. With healthcare practices and practitioners, health beliefs and practices equal cultural relativism. And so we need to partner with the healthcare practices that are prevalent to specific populations. So you might think about the Native Americans, and they're very holistic and spiritual, and they believe in the spiritual perspective versus a scientific or medical means. When you think about the Vietnamese, Japanese, Chinese, there's hot cold beliefs, also that maybe an evil eye, or if they do something, it's because if something happens to them, it's because they've done something wrong. So really take a look at the different folk health beliefs and the use of alternative healthcare systems and healthcare healers. Think about taboos. Some illnesses carry high stigmas and then they're not going to be discussed. So those are going to play definite differences when you think about healthcare practices and healthcare practitioners and cultural diversity. Obstacles. To touch briefly on obstacles, transportation obviously is going to be very high on that list. The high cost of healthcare, the fear and distrust of healthcare workers, and then poor communication between patients and professionals. So here is question 1. And hopefully you have chosen the answer D. D is the answer because the primary approach to caring for a homeless patient is to establish trust. Many of these patients have experienced discrimination and therefore do not trust nurses or other healthcare professionals. When talking with a homeless patient, avoid discriminatory language and do not make assumptions. Take time to communicate, empathize, and show concern to build trust and assess the patient's needs. Question 2, what is the fastest growing ethnic group in the United States? And the answer to that one is A. In 2008, the number of minority populations in the United States accounted for 31% of the total population, and Hispanic and Latinos are the largest minority group at over 15%. However, recent studies have shown that the Asian Americans are currently the fastest growing population or fastest growing group at about 5% of the population. So they're growing faster than the other ethnicities. And which question illustrates the first step of becoming culturally competent? And this was discussed in the very beginning of this presentation. And D, am I aware of my own personal biases and prejudices toward cultures that are different from my own? Becoming culturally competent first requires you to examine your feelings and experiences regarding diversity. And you need to start with an understanding of your own heritage, so that you can build off of that, and then you will need to learn more about specific cultural differences as you are exposed to the workforce. And that is a lump sum, the rundown of cultural diversity. I will end with that and continue on with health promotion and lifestyle choices, health, wellness, and illness.